Moving on to the EPL. Jay, so Mane is gone, Salah's gone, but seemingly, surprise, surprise, Liverpool are coping quite well because they're averaging in the EPL at least about 3 goals per game. They scored 3 against Crystal Palace, 3 against Watford, if I'm not mistaken. And so, Jay, what do you make of that? Are they good enough to continue? Say, for instance, I know some players are coming home and some, are staying in AFCON. If they didn't have Mane coming back, say, for the duration of the whole tournament, Salah coming back for the duration of the whole tournament, do Liverpool keep up with City? Is this evidence when you look at the general gameplay that they can actually get the points?
It's been surprising because I at least had predicted that one of the things that's going to knock Liverpool out of the title race is the fact that they're going to lose the 2 African stars to the AFCON for a period, even just 3 games. That felt like it was too long of a period when you consider that City were on a winning streak that dated back to October. Mm-hmm. And to the compliment of the team and of the coach, they are proving to be a top-class team. That's exactly what they are. But part of that argument was what we saw last season when they did lose Trent for a period to injury, and then they had that spate of injuries uncommon in the EPL era, and they snuck into 4th spot. But then towards the end of the season, they were, if you look at the form table, I think in the last 6 or 8 games, they were the number 1 team on that mini log. So there was evidence there that they can fight against adversity and still somewhat, if not entirely, maintain their credibility as a title challenger, which is what they're doing now. I mean, they did get a goal from someone like Oxlade-Chamberlain over the weekend, but then his overall performance was not that great, and they are doing more than enough to get the results and wait out the period until the main guys up front come back. So am I surprised? Yes, I am slightly surprised. But then having seen how they play and thinking about the fact that Klopp is the kind of manager who you're going to play for, like regardless of what is happening. I even saw a video of him giving beers from the team bus to fans, and it's like this guy is interwoven into the fabric of everything that is Liverpool, and his players love him and they play for him. And okay, we don't have Salah, and I know for a fact that the Liverpool players heard that, and that may have served as some motivation that okay, you think we are a one-man band, let's show you. And Trent has continued being just this generational talent, and you still have your linchpins at the back, maybe not so much in midfield. Oh yeah, in midfield as well, because Fabinho's still there.
Yeah.
And
changed.
yeah, they've kept up as what you can expect them to do.
I think what's good about them keeping up with City in terms of the wins, or rather they actually made ground on City. Mind you, the last game that they played is not Watford, not lost, but second last is not Watford but Brentford, where they won 3-0. What I like is the fact that it was always the argument of who's going to play with Salah and Mane. Is it going to be Bobby or is it going to be Ujota? And they played together in this game, and they found some sort of chemistry. They did it well enough to get the points. And I mean, people deputizing like Abo Ox who don't really get game time in terms of playing a full match, or rather the large parts of it, they played well. I mean, Mina had a not that great a game against Brentford, but people get knocked and they can come back. And that's what I like about Liverpool, that they are, I think, one of the best teams, them and City, where with other teams, once you take this piece out, filling in that void is quite hard because it changes the style of play. Well, with Liverpool largely still the same, because Trent and Robertson who came back, I think that's another plus for them, because it was Tsimikas who was deputizing while he was injured. So you've got Robertson, you've got Trent who are still running the show on the wings. You've still got largely an unchanged midfield. It was just a question of can they still score goals? And with an average of 3 goals per game, I think that question is answered very well in terms of we can still get the goals. Jota's contributing, Ox is contributing, Firmino is there. So I do believe that they're good enough, but I still do worry with the level of performance, because Liverpool was so good an attacking threat that you were wary when you were attacking them. But in the second half, Crystal Palace had a go at them. They tried threw everything in the kitchen sink, but did not get a goal. And I think if you're not wary of, if we get this wrong and Salah's on the counter, you play differently. So I do think that they've managed well so far, but I think there's still a risk that they might lose points without those stars. Yeah,
there was a shaky moment that Van Dijk had in the game against Palace, where in my opinion, he showed Olise far too much of the goal. He showed him to his right foot, which is his weaker foot. Okay, yes, that is what you would advise your defender in that situation to do. But then you get close where you are trying to block or you're trying to make the tackle last ditch as it may be, but you don't show him a full view of the goalkeeper and the goal. And also then with the defense overall, we've seen them have days like that where that high line is what they do. That's part of the rock and roll football. They are gonna play that high line, and they're gonna put pressure on you in your own half and try to win the ball before hopefully you can break that last line. Because if you can get through the press, get through midfield, and you are faced up with the defensive line, then a ball over or through what seemingly is like Red Sea level gaps between like the defensive players, then you've got a chance and you are in on goal. And I think that is something that Liverpool want to live with, where on their worst day they're going to get 7, and on their best day they're going to put 7 past you without conceding, which is what happened against Palace last season. But it's working well enough for them to be able to do what they do. And ultimately what Liverpool want to do is they want to put the goals in the back of the net. Everyone wants to do this, but what I mean by that is they are predicated on scoring a high number of goals. And what you see at the moment is the fact that the system works. I think that is one of the takeaways, that the system does work. The play, obviously it is dependent on the players for it to be its best version. This is true of every system out there. But even if you do take away some of those pieces, it still works well enough for them to get the results. I mean, with Bobby, for example, being in this team, Bobby was the guy around who Klopp built the team originally, and he's been in and out of the team with Jota coming over from Wolves to Liverpool, but now he was there. That is Firmino, and you can somewhat go back to the things that you're doing before, because there's still not an onus on the midfield to score all those goals, so nothing has changed in that regard. The guys up front, they know and they are told you need to take up the slack, and they're doing that to their credit. And finally, for me with Liverpool, the signing of Jota is massive. You say that they are one of the teams that they have a team. I think it's a more concentrated group of guys than what City have, where City are 2-3 deep in almost every position. Well, Liverpool don't have that, but what they do have is that outside of if their main guys are up front, beyond what we saw the firm of Mane, Firmino and Salah, is that when Jota comes into that fold, he's a guy who can hit the ground running, and he's phenomenal. He's been phenomenal for Liverpool, even though that penalty decision that he got, that was never a penalty, because he loses the ball and he runs into the keeper.
Look, it was a coming together, if anything. But I mean, we all know once the fourth official says, referee, come have a look, they are bound to change their mind.
They're going to return it.
And I don't know what the conversation is. Is it come and have a look because you've missed out on something, or is come to have a look at the screen and tell me if you still maintain your decision? Because it's almost at this point 100%, or can't be 100%, but maybe 95%, that everyone who goes to the screen changes their mind quick because it feels like they've made a mistake. But with that one, yeah, the keeper does come out, but at some point he stops because the ball is no longer with Jota for him to make the challenge, and then Jota continues to run into the keeper. So that was a bit dicey, and at that point the game was in the balance. Crystal Palace was still giving as good as they get. Yeah,
they'd come on.
So
very well.
that did change things, and I mean how they played in the second half, which is Crystal Palace, they adapted quite well in terms of formation change and how they kept going at Liverpool. So Jay, another team that I want to look at is Manchester City. They dropped points against Southampton. I mean, drop 2 points. They still have a good and healthy lead. But in terms of a good team, how good, and I know this is like a very, very random thought right now, but how good is Sterling playing right now? Sterling is reaching those heights, but without, I guess, the reward, because usually if he's doing this, he's got his name cemented in the starting lineup. But he was giving the Southampton defense a torrid time, like how he was doing that to Alonso. And I think he's finally hit his peak. And talking about a team, when I mentioned Sterling, I feel his attitude is good now, because Bobby comes into the team without playing excellent attitude. Or comes without playing excellent attitude. I think he's finally gotten over his sulk or Sterling, and he's playing again. But they drop points So what do you make of City dropping points despite them throwing everything that they could at Southampton, because they held on quite well?
I don't make anything of it in terms of it being a biggie. It's in the grander scheme of things, they're still favourites. I still think they're going to win the title. Liverpool have drawn closer with the result, but they still need to win games, and they would still need to go to the Emirates to win not the Emirates. To the Etihad to win that game. But with City, they've got all their main rivals coming to them, and they still have in my opinion, a fairly easy run in when you compare to what Liverpool, who I deem to be the main, if not only challenger left at this point. So it's a result, Chuck. It's one of those things that that happen every so often in the EPL. And I mean, they Southampton took the lead, but then City did come back. And Pep afterwards was speaking, saying that for him, but this is Pep. He has a history of hyperbole, because he said this is by far the best performance he's seen from his team, and it was just like, because he says the result is not there. Sure, given, and I can respect that he, when he's speaking from the performance aspect, and he loved the fact that they were suffering, but they did not give up, or they did not just chalk this one off to, well, yeah, this is not going to go for us. They continued fighting, and when you are as good as what City are, and more often than not, you're putting across displays that are artistic and that are just blowing other teams away, it's very hard to look at your team and wonder to yourself, what do we need to improve? Also, it's very hard to know, what are we going to look like in a moment where we are put into a rough situation? And what I think Pep is looking at, he's looking at the latter stages of like the UCL. When it comes down to a game against a Bayern Munich, or a game against whoever might be in front of you when you get to the semi-finals or the final of a Champions League match, and they might be on top in those moments, how are my team going to react? Because he's not going to know that by watching them against Leeds United and score 7 past them. But in a game like this, where they fall behind and there is the crowd and the atmosphere, and the question is, do you have more than just your footballing talents? He was satisfied with that. And I think at the end of the day, as I'm saying, it's a draw. They were never going to win the rest of the matches to end the season. And it's just one of those things that happened.
I think I could agree with you, because you would need a lot of things to go wrong for City, for Liverpool to catch up, which I don't think would happen. But I mean, I like the fact that Southampton gave him a lot to think about between Uprohan or Adams in terms of potential for a counter and them running down the wing. They kept those guys busy. Like, you didn't see Cancelo in the game. I mean, you saw Walker. Walker was advanced for like large parts of the game, particularly in the first half. But in terms of pinning the players back, Southampton were a handful with the players that they have. So I don't know what to make of their actual form, because sometimes they're good, but I mean, their league position suggests that they haven't had a good campaign. But it's on the upturn right now, and they're giving teams a tough time. It's a tough task to beat Southampton.
It's cyclical in the EPL, because you're seeing this with Villa now. Because when you look at the run that Villa are on, you would think to yourself, oh, they are maybe even pushing top 7, top 6, and you find that they just entered the top half because they had a difficult start to the season. And this happens with almost all these teams in the EPL, that given in a given period they're not as good, and then in another one they're better than that. This is what keeps it exciting. A team I want to ask you about is Spurs, right? They lost against Chelsea. That is not a surprise, because in our lifetime we've never seen one team dominate another one as much as Chelsea have done to Spurs over such a long period of time. But coming into this game, they were on a good run. I believe unbeaten under Conte in the EPL, at least. Different story altogether in Europe. But were they exposed against Chelsea? Has Conte had the kind of effect that we would have expected him to have? Is it are they further along than what they were when he found them, or is it still more of the same?
I think, speaking of cycles, one finally gets beaten in this calendar year, and one team finally gets a win, and turning two different corners.
Whenever Chelsea are in a bad spot, they should just be lined up against Spurs. This season alone, 4 games, 8 goals, and none conceded. Won all 4 games against Spurs. Talk about a bogey team.
I mean, now's the time to be playing Spurs when he's trying to figure out what they are.
That's bread and butter for Chelsea.
Look, I feel he has improved certain aspects. I'll tell you one, like Emerson Royale, when he came to Spurs, you and I were both asking ourselves, like, what has he added to the team? Like, why did he even join? But now, in terms of an attacking threat, he's an asset in the team. I like the fact that he's brought back Harry Winks. I like that Lucas Moura has somewhat been rejuvenated. Bergwijn is integrated back into the fold. So they are playing a little bit differently. But what I didn't like about Conte, especially where they are now, because you don't want to be playing in the Europa League, in the Conference League, and you want to push for top 4. The way he had set up his team, and I understand Chelsea are a strong team, and you're playing at Stamford Bridge, and you don't want too many problems, but they were too defensive for me. I felt that you only have Bergwijn, you only have Harry Kane, and basically almost Winks as an outlet. The rest of them are there to do a job, which is try and contain Chelsea, which they didn't really do very well in the course of the game. But what he has done, I think they're definitely better than what they were under Nuno. They definitely are a different team, and I believe there's more to come from the Spurs side. It's just not going to happen overnight. And then with Chelsea, if I were to look at their performance as well, with people like Ziyech, it almost feels like it was overdue to produce a moment of magic. With people like Kovacic, who have been injured for large parts of the season, that if they get a run, things will start coming right for them, because Chelsea are their own worst enemy at certain times, because they should be way closer than what they are to City in terms of the games that they've had and how they've lost the games and how they've dealt with certain chances, and like their barren run, that this is only their first game. This is only their first win this season. This year. This is only their first win this year. That is crazy for a team in the top 3.